I'll never forget the sound. It was like gunshots cracking across the water. I stood frozen on my porch, staring through binoculars, as the HOA president herself, dressed head to toe in blinding white tennis gear, swung a bright red sledgehammer into the hand-carved railing of my dock. Each strike sent wood flying into the lake, and standing right beside her was her 30-year-old son. Filming it all on his phone like this was some kind of game. The worst part wasn't the splintering cedar. It was watching the bronze memorial plaque for my late aunt get smashed into the water, sinking into the murky lake bed. That moment burned into my chest like acid, and I knew my quiet retirement had just been turned into a battlefield. My name is Mark Callahan. I'm 58. A retired carpenter with a bum leg after 3 decades of swinging hammers on job sites. 3 years ago, my Uncle Henry passed and left me his cabin on Maple Ridge Lake. It wasn't just a cabin. It was the place he built with his own hands. Log by log, stone by stone. The wraparound porch still smelled like cedar. The fireplace could fit an entire hog roast. And the mornings, good Lord, the mornings were golden. I thought I'd finally earned peace, coffee barefoot on the dock, listening to the loons at dusk, building birdhouses in my little shed workshop. But that all vanished the day the neighborhood elected a new HOA president. A woman named Lorna Wilcox. She was ruthless. A real estate shark who wore perfume so strong it couldn't cover the stench of greed coming off her. She drove a red BMW that gleamed like blood in the morning sun. And she treated every property around the lake like prey. The first time she came to my cabin, she didn't bother with pleasantries. She marched up my steps, heels clicking like a countdown, and shoved a fat packet into my chest. "Mr. Callahan," she said with a smile sharp enough to cut glass, "your property is lowering community standards. $15,000 in required upgrades, or she'd fine me $200 a day. And if I couldn't keep up, the HOA was graciously offering to buy me out for less than half of what lakefront property's worth." Then she added, almost casually, that her son Brandon had always loved this spot and could finally enjoy the view it deserved. My heart sank. That's when I realized this wasn't about standards. It was about stealing what was mine. The next few weeks were hell. Letters piled up in my mailbox, violations that made no sense. My septic tank, brand new and county, approved. Failed environmental standards. My shed, the little place I built for woodworking, suddenly classified as an unlicensed business. My dock, measured and surveyed back in '89, now supposedly intruding into community water space. And Brandon, her son, swaggered around in a fake badge, snapping pictures, pretending to be some compliance officer. It would have been laughable if it hadn't been so infuriating. At first, I tried to ignore it, told myself not to stir things up. But at night, sitting on that porch with a glass of whiskey, staring at the moon shimmering across the water, I started to crack. Doubts clawed at me. What if I was being stubborn? What if I was risking everything for a patch of land I couldn't protect? My uncle drowned in this very lake right before he was supposed to meet the county prosecutor about HOA irregularities. Was I headed for the same fate? For the first time, I considered giving up, selling out, packing up, walking away. The thought gutted me. But then came the cracks in their armor. I demanded to see the credentials of the surveyor they sent. He stammered and went pale. Turned out he wasn't licensed anywhere. He sold insurance out of Ohio. Brandon's badge had compliance spelled wrong. And when I dug into the bylaws, I realized Lorna's new environmental codes had never even been voted on. She was making them up as she went. The despair I'd felt twisted into something else. Anger. Yes, but also clarity. If I walked away now, they'd do this to the next family, and the next, until the whole shoreline belonged to her. That's when neighbors started whispering their own stories. The Mortons forced out by septic fines. The Garcias harassed until they sold for pennies. Folks were scared. But when I told them I had evidence, a spark lit. And then, one afternoon, retired federal judge Daniel Worth knocked on my door. He had a stack of notes, thick glasses sliding down his nose, and a smile like a man who'd found his next big case. "Mr. Callahan," he said, flipping through my documents, "this woman is running a criminal racket. 15 different state and federal violations. You're not crazy, and you're not alone." We rallied. We called a legitimate meeting. 30 days' notice. Saturday morning so working folks could come. 23 neighbors showed up, more than in any meeting for years, one by one. They stood and spoke, voices trembling, then steady, sharing how they'd been threatened, extorted, bullied. Mrs. Green, 83, dropped the bombshell. Lorna had come to her door with cash in hand, asking her to vote a certain way, warning her that accidents happen to old ladies. The room erupted. We took a vote right then. 19-4, Lorna was out. But the real knockout came when Judge Worth revealed the truth. The HOA had never even been legally incorporated. Lorna's husband had botched the filing years ago. Every rule, every fine, every sale, illegal. For the first time in months. I felt the tide turning. Lorna didn't slink away quietly. No, she doubled down. One morning, sheriff's cruisers rolled into my drive, flashing paperwork that claimed I owed $31,000 in HOA fines, and they were here to seize my property. I scanned the papers. The case number didn't match any court docket. 10 minutes later, the deputies drove off, embarrassed, realizing they'd been handed forgeries typed up on her husband's letterhead. Then, while I was at the grocery store, Lorna and Brandon broke into my cabin. They cut my locks, installed new deadbolts, plastered yellow condemned signs on my windows. What she didn't know was that the marina's security cameras caught it all. In crystal clear HD, I came back, saw their shiny new locks, and went live on my phone. "Good morning, Silver Pine Lake," I said, holding up bolt cutters. "This is what happens when HOA bullies try to steal your home." I snapped their locks right off, reclaimed my door, and uploaded the footage. Within hours. Silver Pine justice was trending. My little cabin had become a national symbol. Brandon sealed their fate when he got drunk at a bar and bragged about how they'd pulled this scam on other lakes, forcing families out, flipping properties for profit. Someone recorded him. That tape went straight to investigators. The FBI was suddenly very interested. Meanwhile, we weren't just resisting, we were building. I designed a 40-foot observation tower on my land, perfectly within code. It would host weather equipment, a bird watching deck, a radio repeater for emergencies. But the real poetry? It blocked the entire view from Lorna's glass mansion. Every weekend, neighbors came to help. We poured concrete, hammered beams, wired solar panels. With every board we raised, hope rose too, and every sabotage she threw at us backfired. She hired college kids to steal our lumber, caught on camera, plates visible. confessed immediately. She sent her cousin pretending to be an OSHA inspector, exposed within hours. The real OSHA, furious enough to track our permits. She filed FAA complaints claiming our 40-foot tower was a hazard to planes. Inspectors laughed in her face. Each failure only pushed her deeper into the hole. Then came the night she showed up with a gas can. 3 in the morning. Black yoga pants. Skulking like a cartoon burglar. My cameras caught her pouring gasoline around the lumber pile. And because I'd started streaming the feed online after her earlier stunts, hundreds of people were watching live. By the time she struck a match, the fire department was already on its way. They found her drenched in fuel, holding matches, babbling about community safety. They cuffed her right there. Her mug shot, hair frazzled, eyes wild, went viral before sunrise. And still, she had one last pathetic act. At the tower's grand opening, with 800 people gathered, cameras rolling, she stormed in, waving papers. "This tower violates aviation safety," she shrieked, thrusting documents at the crowd. Judge Worth leaned over, calm as ever, and asked, "Would you like to explain why these FAA forms are printed on your husband's law firm letterhead?" The color drained from her face, and then, like fate itself, a real FAA inspector stepped forward from the crowd. "Ma'am," he said, "this tower is completely legal. The documents you hold are fraudulent." The FBI agents, who'd been quietly enjoying barbecue, stepped up and cuffed her again, in front of the whole town. That was the end of her reign. Her mansion was condemned for environmental violations, bulldozers tearing it down while our tower rose higher each day. Her husband lost his law license. Brandon turned witness, spilling every dirty secret. And me, I climbed that tower, 40 feet into the sky. Looking out over the lake, I almost lost, feeling the wind cut across my face. The silence was sweeter than any applause. Justice wasn't loud. It was steady, solid, undeniable, like the beams we had bolted together. When I looked down from that tower, I saw Lorna being driven away in cuffs. Her empire reduced to rubble, her supporters scattering like crows. I didn't need to celebrate. Watching her disappear, powerless for the first time, was enough. The lake was quiet again. And so was I. And that's what I've learned. The higher someone builds on lies, the harder the fall when truth knocks them down. This is my story, and if you take anything from it, let it be this. On HOA Drama Unfolded, justice always finds a way to rise taller than corruption.